Good afternoon, folks. It's just after 1 p.m. on Monday, February 28th, 2022. I'll hereby call the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust meeting to order. We'll start out with a roll call because we have members present and members remotely. So Judith, I'll start with you, please.
Here?
Just state your name.
Oh, Judith
Yep.
Underwood?
Donald Howell.
Joe Powers, Chair,
Brendan Lowney.
and remotely.
Larry Brophy from Stewart, Florida.
Thanks, Larry.
Yes, always remind us, yes.
So, yeah, well, a lovely reminder today. So we do have a full complement of Affordable Housing Trust members. We'll get right into our first agenda item. And so Jeff and Janet, if you want to come to the presentation table, feel free. So we have representatives from the Adult Shared Living of Harwich Incorporated coming before us to update us on their project and to have a general discussion with the trust. Good afternoon, folks. Welcome back. Jeff, do you want to take it over?
Sure. We've been very busy the last month since we've spoken to you last. We have gotten many donations of services and goods. Cape Cod Aggregates has stepped up to the plate. We have Lease Associates stepped up to the plate to donate all the labor.
That's great.
Wow.
Cape Cod Aggregates is donating all the stone for the property that we need. Cape Cod Ready Mix is donating a portion of the concrete, and then they'll give us the concrete at a discounted rate. Other ones that I'm gonna reach out to are, Harwich Port Heating and Cooling. They're gonna help us with some of the labor for plumbing, electrical, heating, and cooling. So, we don't have letters of commitment signed, that's my next step. We've put together
Is that in our package, Jeff?
no, it's not.
Okay,
I didn't have enough from Joe.
sure.
And we're working with, Avalon Building Systems. We have a finalized drawing of the house, the exterior and the interior. And we have a rough budget. Here it is. And then Avalon will be getting back to me with electrical drawings, foundation drawings, things of that nature. So we've been quite busy. We've set up a first annual golf tournament over at the Captain's Golf Course in Brewster. And we're going to be hopefully attending the Cape Cod Tech home show and the Rotary Club home show at the Parcels High School. It's coming in April. The one at Cape Tech is in March, and that's $490 a shot. So we're gonna see if we can get some sponsors. But we're trying to get as many volunteers to help us. And, you know, I just remain hard at work with it. Everybody has an updated brochure, and I also have, which I don't have my copy to around, the updated floor plan.
Jeff, if you wouldn't mind, can you just state again your mission for anyone that's watching this meeting remotely? It's very succinct, but I think very impactful, and I think it's better coming from you.
The mission is to obtain affordable housing for low-income adults who are 22 years and older. Disabled adults, 22 years and older.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Thank you. Have you had a chance to see our agenda today? We're going to be talking about a number of parcels of land. So what I'd like to do is open it up for trust members for any comments or questions they have, and then I'd ask you to join us in your original seats as we go through it, and we can have an ongoing conversation. So at this point, I'll open it up to trust members. Brendan, excuse me. if I can start with you.
Yep, absolutely. No, it sounds very exciting. Good job and everything you've accomplished to date. What you're going to hear in the next couple of properties, we're going to be breaking down the ones we have, and Oak Street has always been, maybe a good selection. So we're going through that process of getting engineers involved to see what's viable on that property. So we have bids out to 3 engineers right now to get quotes back to have that service done. So we'll talk more about that when we get to
Sure.
it. But yeah, no, great job.
Larry Brophy, any comments or questions for Jeff or Janet?
At this point in time, no.
Thank you. Don?
I'm going to echo what Brendan said. I mean, it's a really commendable purpose. The only question is what we can do to help you with it, and it's going to take time. We told you that before, but you're actually doing what we were hoping that you would do, and on our part, you'll see in the agenda, we're going to be talking about the parcel and the engineering and the surveying that we need to know before we can even know what we could build on it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Judith?
I just want to say, echoing what everybody else said, congratulations. Keep plugging at this. This is great. The letters of intent are really important as well. And, yeah, and I think this golf tournament is fantastic. You should see if they can, the Harwich one can do, you have a little competition going there. So that's great. Great work. Congratulations.
I have a question. We,
Certainly.
of course, we look at the lands just, driving by, but we did find a road that goes, it looks like it goes through, a dirt road, and then there's a fence, which, and I imagine it's the golf course on the other side.
I believe that's the case.
Correct, yeah.
Is that the road between the two parcels?
I'd have to defer to any trust members who are more familiar with that property than I.
That's why we're looking at a surveyor.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah.
I don't,
I'm gonna pull up the property.
Sure.
Yeah, in
yeah,
a second
I don't know
here.
that it would be considered a road as much as it's a path into the woods if people need to get there.
Because at the gate at the end, I think there's an opening, we thought maybe the golf course uses it as a.
And that's what I'm wondering is if the golf course actually uses that to get to Oak Street for any, that end of Oak Street for any other reason.
Yeah,
So I can check with Sean Fernandez on that.
okay.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The golf people did come in a couple of years ago when they were talking about this. They had no real relation with the property then. They weren't talking about using it at all. Their only concern was what it would look like as a gateway, to get in to the golf course a little bit further down the road. So I don't get the impression that they are using it for any way. And as Joe said, there are cart paths, there are ancient ways. They don't necessarily give you the right to do anything, but they also can wind up dividing properties. That's why we need a survey.
Right. It's tough to see even from the aerial where it is, but, if you know it even better than I, but.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Larry.
I think, I can't say this with certainty, but I suspect it's probably used by the golf course to get, it's an internal roadway to the golf course. I do not think it's an ancient way, but I could be wrong. I think the golf course just uses it to get from point A to point B.
All right, thanks, Larry.
As the only golfer amongst us.
Well, the only good golfer amongst us. That's all
Not
I'll
a miniature golf. Come on.
I'm
So
even bad at that.
the reply at this point would be that, we understand that there's a pathway there. We wouldn't consider it to be a road for planning purposes, but we'll get more information on that as we progress through the discussions and the process. And for me,
We're
I,
excited about it.
sure, absolutely. And again, as the members have said, you've made quite a bit of progress, which is fantastic. My only question is do you have a status update on your CPC article?
We do not.
Well, they sent us a whole sheet, two pages on the things that they want, but some of it we can't do because evidence of ownership or control of
Okay.
property with deed, we're not there. And then engineering plan, so when you get to that point, that will help us, but we have a whole list of things, this is our worksheet.
Sure,
That we
okay.
go by, and some of it we have done, getting in touch with other agencies, checking out what's in the area. But there's no place that actually has shared living like that we do for disabled. The veterans have a program, but it's limited to a year. They have a year to get their lives together and then
Sure.
move on. So we would rather hope that people would get together and stay.
Yeah, we're hoping for long-term
Sure.
residents.
And Jeff would be the resident manager and will handle things. And, you know, if he runs into problems, he'll go to the board of directors. He's got a lot of expertise there too.
John?
Yeah, this is paperwork stuff, but I'm pretty sure it's going to become relevant as you move forward with the CPC and other places. You've actually filed and been granted a 501c3 by the IRS, and you've got articles of incorporation with the State Secretary of
A
State?
year ago,
Okay, great. Because those documents are going to wind up being relevant at some point.
Yes.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions from the trust?
None.
Any inquiries from the general public present? All right. So thank you, folks. I'd ask if you just go back to your seats. We're going to go to item B now, which is a list of 6 parcels that the trust now has possession of by executed deeds, 2 of which relate to the area of land that Jeff and Janet were just speaking to under Agenda A. It's the trust members you should have. Larry, did you receive your packet by email last week?
I did, I've been over it.
Okay, great. Larry, I do have some new documents that I'll send to you after the fact.
Okay.
That relate to a future agenda topic. But for the members, what you should have in your packet is you'll see that there's a list of 6 parcels, and the deeds that correspond to those have been included. And I think there's also, I think every time there's a reference to the original article at town meeting, which was Article 61 of the annual town meeting back in 2019. I'm going to make a quick reference to item E, which we'll get to later on, but it does relate to the parcels identified as 1 and 2 under topic B, and that is professional survey services. We have a request for quotes out, technical difficulties. We do have a request for quotes out on that, and hope to have something back by the middle of the month. So I would open it up to the trust members as to how you want to proceed with these 6 parcels and the deeds that we have, and any discussion on what can happen next.
You want to tackle Oak Street first?
Sure.
Seems like the easier one.
Yep.
So you've already said it. Megan was very helpful in helping get 3 quotes out to, I think it was to Ryder Wilcox, Bowler, and Coastal Engineering.
Correct.
We already had one from Bowler from 2 years ago. That will just have to be updated. So they're the only ones to respond back as of, as of today. So we're still waiting to hear back from the other 2, but Bowler is, at least we got their attention. So hopefully we get some services from them. And, yeah, that's where we're at with that property.
So Brendan, is that B1A and B1B?
Yep, and it's roughly, almost, it's a little bit under 3 acres. It's 2 parcels. And those are the 2 right next to the golf course on Oak.
I'd have to rely upon the trust members, if you recall, the discussion at the town meeting back in 2019. Was there much discussion about these parcels and potential uses, or was it just to convey it to the trust and for the trust to figure out next steps?
Yeah, that was really, go ahead, Don.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. The discussion actually just centered around Depot Street, or Depot Road. There was some concern about some members for the Conservation Commission who didn't really have a meeting, but they had talked with each other about how they didn't want us to be developing property that had wetlands in it. And I, for one, assured them that we'd have to go through the same process as everybody else does in order to do a site plan, and that we have to add setbacks for that.
Yeah, on Depot Road,
That was a major discussion. The rest of it,
Yeah, the rest of it
there
was-
was no discussion. really.
correct, there was no discussion, correct. That was the only property that had discussion. There was a vernal pool that they wanted to stay X amount of feet away from, or yards. And, instead of getting, I don't know what it was, how many acres? It was almost like 9 acres. We got 4 buildable pieces of land out of that.
But it is worth repeating again now, because as Joe has pointed out, there's some people who weren't there or don't
Right.
remember.
It's been a
Nothing
while.
that we do can be counter to law. On zoning, we can do 40Bs, we can do other things for density, but we are not allowed to completely ignore septic requirements or conservation requirements. And everybody should be resting assured that if we do something, it's not going to be to the detriment of those things.
Correct.
The recharge district,
No, it's just a lot of
just on the,
I didn't hear
It's
what was
off
the
yeah.
question?
But I was trying to remember if that was in the recharge district or not, but it wasn't, it was
No.
not even close. So,
So that was a reference to map 63 parcel J30 Depot Road, which is
Zero
number
Depot.
5,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's J1, J2, J3.
It's a similar situation as the one we just discussed. We haven't surveyed it. We don't know exactly what's there, and nobody should presume that we're going to wind up developing in a sensitive area that no one else would be allowed to do.
Yeah.
So can I ask a question?
Certainly.
So is there a actual process that we would follow? Like, are there steps that we, I mean, do we need to vote on, or is the,
It's ours now.
I think the conversation we had last meeting was just to get all the properties in front of us
yeah,
and just go through them to get a sense of where we are with each one.
okay,
So, we can just go down. So we haven't really done anything with Depot Road.
right.
But we've done stuff with Oak, we've done stuff with Sisson. So, the Marceline project, property we just purchased. So I think just going through the properties just to refresh everyone's memory.
Got
And
it.
then we could set an action plan, not so much an overall action plan, but for each property.
Yep,
I think that would be a better way to do it. Obviously, we have a mission statement, right, affordable housing, but the action plan is something that I think a lot of people are asking for. So something I even heard in, a couple of meetings, other boards talking about it. So I think the action plan would just be nice to get out there so people understand.
Absolutely. Larry, just so you know what's going on, we have Elaine Shovelin from Real Estate and Open Space.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Just a note, and I shall read it. The J3 parcel, there are 2 certified vernal pools, wetlands, and our wildlife connector. Both properties contain state estimated or priority habitat for rare and endangered species, as well as core habitat. In Article 61 of the May 7th, 2019 town meeting, it was voted that 100 feet north of the northernmost vernal pool may now be used for affordable housing.
Thank you.
That was the vote.
Thank you for that.
Can you come back for a question, Elaine? Sorry, did you say it is now available for?
It was voted
To make it available.
that it may
Yep.
now be used for affordable housing.
Correct.
Thank you.
With the requirements that we do the survey and that we.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's still some work to do on that property as well. But that gets to the question, like, do we start spending money on all these properties, or do we, so for Oak Street, we can just have an open discussion about that. Oak Street, there's potential to work with the adult shared living,
Mhm.
which is a great opportunity, but we don't know if that property is gonna yield 1, 2, 3, or 4 bedrooms. So until we find that out, And it's all about dollars to, I mean, how much you want to spend per unit. I think that's important. We got to keep that in mind. I always bring that Yarmouth example up every time, where they spent 30,000 for each of their units. They got 69 for 2.1 million. That seems like, we couldn't build anything for $30,000. So that worked for that town. Not saying that model's for us, but just think about the dollars when you're thinking about per unit and what's going to take. And we just can't be spending $500,000 to build one unit.
Right.
So we only have so many resources.
No,
Go through these sequentially then?
Go ahead.
Why don't we just go through them sequentially? I'd hate to keep
Yeah,
back and
yeah, that's what I
bouncing
thought
back
we were
and
gonna
forth
do, yeah.
between properties.
Yeah, so I'll continue. So Oak Street, I think we could wrap that up. We kind of know where that's going and wait for the engineering services. I think that's a good one to find out. Is it viable for working with someone like Adult Shared Living, or is it a property we sell? It's going to be that simple with that property.
Larry, any comments to add to that?
No, I think I agree with Brendan. I mean, when we get down to a further item in the agenda, we'll be talking about, what it costs to put in a unit of housing, and I'm not trying to be blasé about it, but the cost effectiveness of it, and are we getting a good rate of return for a dollar invested? And so that becomes relatively critical. And I think Brendan hit it right on the head. Are we going to sell it, or are we just going to transfer it? And it depends on the bottom line.
Yep, agreed.
Any other conversation or comments about items 1 and 2 under item B for
Nope.
Oak Street? All right, next parcel that was listed is map 63, parcel J10 Depot Road. And for the trust members, that was also included on the first deed that you have in the packet. And the reference there is containing 1.41 acres more or less, as shown on the plan entitled Plan of Proposed Land Acquisition between Depot Road and Route 39 East Harwich, dated July 27, 1992, prepared by Harwich Engineering Department, recorded with the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds and Plan Book 49, page 4, being those premises described in an order of taking dated September 29, 1992, recorded with the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds and Book 8241, page 226. So again, one parcel containing roughly 1.41 acres. Any comments and thoughts on that one? I
So-
know I live near a depot. I still don't know if I live
of
near
the three.
Depot Road or Depot Street.
So those properties would all go together, right? If something were to be done there, I think 1, 2, and 3, or maybe not. I think if that's in the same boat as Oak Street.
So
Agreed?
Can I ask a question about the engineers? And Brenda, maybe you know this. So there are a number of properties, right, that we have, and trying to figure out which one gets surveyed first. Or is it that we're going to ask these engineering firms to put in bids for surveying all of them as a cost savings for them? I don't,
Yeah, no, well, the cost
I don't know
savings,
that I'm-
whether they're multitasking or not, I'm sure, I don't know if they would do that, but I think it's important to get this all together, because this will help us create, more of the action plan that will get us to a budget.
okay.
And then when we get together with CPC, present applications, we can give them some more information, which would be helpful to hopefully get more funding. So I think the more information or more action we take on each one, it could be baby steps, but I think it's important. Maybe we do get bids for a depot and just see what it would cost, see where we are dollar-wise. That's a big parcel, J1, 2, and 3.
But I guess my question to everybody is how do we come to that decision?
Well, we just, go ahead.
I
Sorry,
mean,
go ahead. What he said.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's going to be informed by the engineering and the surveying, because
So
how
are
much
these
you
all
can
going to
do
be
there and
engineered?
how hard it would be to do it. Because the objective is to get a shovel in the ground, and if we're constrained by monetary considerations, once we know what it is and how hard it is to do, then we'll know pretty much what the rank order
I
is.
totally get that, but I guess my question is even simpler than that. Are we going to have all of these properties surveyed and engineered? Or are we as a body trying to figure out which ones we're gonna start with?
I think you need to do all.
We're gonna do all. I think
Okay.
that's the plan.
If I could jump in, I think,
yeah.
yeah, I think it's agreed that we'll do all,
Okay.
but as we'll see in the
I was getting a
agenda.
little confused there, that's all.
Well, I understand the confusion, I think, because we actually have already started. We're trying to do survey services specifically to Oak Street.
Right.
As it relates to the prior discussion. So that's the only thing that's been put out for quote.
Okay.
Is simply
Thank you.
survey services for Oak Street. To your question, as I understand it, we have, as a group, have not talked about the technical services that need to be applied to the other parcels
Okay.
yet. And to an earlier point that you had made, Brendan, I also want to put out there that because of this pending procurement, we are already in the process of looking to spend money,
Right.
you know, on those survey services for Oak Street.
Okay.
Does that
Yeah.
help clarify?
I was very
But to- yeah,
unsure
but to
where we
Don's
were in
point,
this
yeah.
process, that's all.
To Don's point, I mean, the properties J1, J2, and J3, that could be 4 or 5 times the amount that Oak Street would be. So, and with Sisson Road, we already had something from previous years that was done, a
Right.
survey and a septic plan with 2 options. So right now, we have nothing on that property, but, you know, I think we test with Oak Street, and then maybe, yeah, we'll see how that goes, and we'll do the same with Depot.
And in terms of spending money, I just want to make get everybody back on the same page again. The Marsline property was lightning in a bottle. It was the quintessential argument about what are you spending your money on? I don't know. We're going to have to see if an opportunity comes forward. And it would not have come forward again. We were willing to take a leap of faith. That's not the way we would generally operate. We're generally going to operate in the way Brendan is describing. We'll take the property, we'll have people look it over, and then we'll figure out what our priorities are based on how easy or hard it is to develop each of the ones we have.
So all of these will get reviewed by,
Most likely.
But we were particularly interested in Oak Street because we have a request in front of us that can't go forward with the CPC unless they have property.
but I guess my question then is, do we just hire engineers to do all of these properties or not?
Well, the thing is,
That's where I'm
so-
getting confused.
All right, so right now, Oak Street, we have 3
Yeah.
requests out. Bowler has already entertained us once, 2 years ago. They're gonna revise that quote. They're the only ones to respond back. In construction right now, because I'm in it, it
Yeah.
is very
It's crazy, I know, I
The
know.
fact that Bowler got back to us in days is promising, and I think we just have to see how that goes. So,
Sequence.
yeah.
And then all these other properties, are we not putting out requests for review, or? That's where I'm just getting a little confused.
Yeah, no, we will.
How can we make decisions on them if we don't have that information?
Correct. So the
But-
first decision is to get the engineering, so we can agree today that, you know, we can move forward with requesting engineering services for those properties.
Okay,
That's the point of today. We're gonna
Got
hit
it.
every property, so Oak Street is in motion
okay.
in some capacity. We're going in a direction, and, do you wanna call
Yep.
Jeff? He's got his hand up.
I
Oh,
got that.
oh,
I
oh, you got
wanted you to
anything?
finish your thought.
Yeah, so Oak Street's moving,
Okay,
and that's what we want all of these properties to do.
okay.
And thank you. Jeff, if you could go to the lectern.
Sorry, I don't know if you saw that.
Thank you. Nope. But I was listening to what you were saying as
Yeah,
well. It's very helpful.
When I spoke with Coastal Engineering, Tara told me that she would talk to the owners and see if they would be willing to donate some of their services to Oak Street specifically.
Okay. That's
She's
great.
one of the owners, but she had to talk to all of the owners.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'll make sure we reach out to her.
So I think we did, I can go into more detail under the procurement update, because we have solicited for survey services, and that was one of the firms that we reached out to. So it's helpful information, but it also adds another angle to this, meaning the town, through the Affordable Housing Trust, is soliciting for survey services for the town for that property. And the town would be looking to procure the contract and spend the money. So if Coastal Engineering is looking to do, are they looking to do, did they say they want to do survey for the town to expedite your process?
Yeah, because we're the owners of the property.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And the comment was made because we're presently the owners of the property.
When I told her the owners of the property were the town of Harwich, that's when I told Megan downstairs that we were working with Coastal. And I don't know if that's why she decided to get a quote from Coastal as well.
No, I can tell you that the town, we do quotes all the time. We have a number of different firms that we reach out to that we expect to be responsive. So Coastal's already on our list.
Okay.
So I don't know that it was impacted by your conversation. That answers my question. Thank you, Jeff. Anything else as it relates to either parcels, map 63 parcels J1 and 2, which are in order 0 Depot Road, Orleans Road, and 0 Depot Road? Larry, did you have any comments or questions regarding those
No.
3 parcels? Anybody else?
No, that's fine. I'm good.
Thank you. Anybody else on the trust? Anybody in the audience? All right. So then we have item number 6 under B, which is map 56 parcel P12 0 Depot Street, which I now understand to be closer to my home, now that that's material. But I also do want to emphasize that the reason why this one is separated is because when Attorney Catherine Klein at KP Law was doing the research, there was a notation of a tax lien. And so before she could finalize that one, you can see the reference in the deed where it says that that land identified on Assessor's Map 56 as parcel P12 containing 1 acre more or less, described in the judgment and tax lien case dated December 29, 2006, recorded with the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds in Book 21728, page 319. See instrument of taking recorded with the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds in Book 8422, page 322. And for title, see deed recorded with the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds in Book 770, page 182, or 652, page 71. And I think that finalized everything. She got the answers that she needed, so it's been properly conveyed and recorded. Having said that, is there any discussion relative to that parcel at 0 Depot Street?
Don't know enough about it. I was actually part of the
Yeah.
original text.
Yeah, the original report on, so there's no activity to report on that property. That's always been the case with that.
Yeah, we'd still have to look and see what's possible to build there.
Yeah.
Any comments, questions, Larry, regarding 0 Depot Street?
No. No.
Thank you. Anybody else on the trust?
No.
Anybody in the audience? Yes, Elaine, please. Larry, we have Elaine Shovelin coming back to the microphone.
Okay, thank you.
When this property came before the Real Estate and Open Space Committee, we did walk the property with the conservation agent, and it was determined there are wetlands in the back of this property, and that it would probably only be suitable for like maybe a duplex. There's not enough space for anything much larger than that, to my memory.
Any questions for Elaine from trust members?
No, but I do want to make
No.
a comment about the chair. Appreciate you expediting this process. We were unaware that we didn't have the ability to even talk about developing any of the properties up until a few months ago because they were never properly filed after town
Yeah,
meeting.
so thank you for that.
So
yeah.
thank you for breaking that logjam up.
Thank you. I will say, looking in the direction of the audience, my pleasure, my job. But Elaine, thank you for that information as well, because we know we're looking at what could be considered to be close to an acre, but not really an acre when it comes to building,
Right.
right? sorry, one more question. I hate to get your steps in. But when did Rios do the site visit?
It was probably in 2019.
Ahead of the town meeting action? Yep, thank you. All right, so we have site visit conducted in 2019 that indicates it might be suitable only for a duplex. Any further discussion on this item under B6, where the next agenda item relates to an additional property being Sisson Road, which was also conveyed and is contained in the first set of deeds, and as well as Pleasant Lake Avenue. So before we go there, anything else on item B6?
No.
All right. So then going on to item C is a discussion on the Pleasant Lake Avenue project and Sisson Road properties. Brendan, I believe this was an agenda item that you had asked Ellen to account for, and is that accurate?
Yeah, I just wanted to just have a discussion about both properties where we're at, you know.
So to that end, to help with discussion, Larry, these are the addenda that I have to get to you, but each trust member should now have the deeds that relate to the Marceline properties, as we call it, which was the first item, book 34262, page 277. And then there's a narrative of information that I received from Katie Klein, again at KP Law, regarding the conveyance as it relates to 265 Sisson Road, because as you folks already know, that's presently the site of the Harwich Junior, or they don't call it that anymore, but what I used to know as the Harwich Junior Theater, and more of their
Cape
practice
Cod Theater
facility.
Company.
Thank you. And practice and workshop area, Don, is that fair to say? They don't do productions. out there, correct?
Rehearsal and school.
Thank you. So, when the Board of Selectmen directed me to work on the conveyances under Article 61 of the 2019 Annual Town Meeting, when the conveyance came to 265 Sisson Road, several questions that you can see in the material that I've handed out were presented by the board for me to present to council. And so there were 4 questions. To me, the answers are straightforward, but still problematic, is the way I would say that. And so for the benefit of anyone else listening or watching, these materials will be made available on our website, but I will go through the questions and then we can have a discussion on that. Before we do that, though, I would first talk about the Pleasant Lake Avenue parcels that we have in the deed, and also just add that there was a separate procurement effort made by the town on behalf of the Board of Selectmen as it relates to the owner's unknown eminent domain taking from October of 20, what year is this? 2021. Vacation was wonderful. The problem is, we had a number of surveyors respond and indicate that they're not inclined to take the job on. And so I did ask one of them, is it because the town already has a survey in hand, and is that a professional courtesy? And paraphrasing, essentially, no, it's just a very, very cloudy parcel of land. And so we have not had any success in acquiring survey services to get a second survey, which comes back to, I believe the value that was stated in the last appraisal was $170,000? I think I have it here. So we're still searching for a surveyor for that parcel of land to move forward on the eminent domain taking. I'm going to pause there and open it up for discussions. Selectman Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a little confused. The real point of doing it this way with eminent domain is to clear the cloud and to take the aggregation of the property and integrate it into the other 2 properties. So it's no surprise that it was hair-raising to get to the point where we did with the properties that surrounded it, because there's all kinds of loosely filed documents through the years where at one point I think I mentioned to the trust that Jimmy thought he owned property that he didn't own, and he did own property that he didn't know he owned. And things were kind of loose back then. So the point of the eminent domain would be to just lift that cloud and allow us within the. It's obviously worth more if we can lift the cloud, because then you can get the property rights straight on. And anybody who wants to come forward with a claim, which is why we set aside an escrow amount for people who are seeking to make a land claim, that there'll be a bank there to be able to do it. But yeah, sure, it's difficult to do anything in its current condition. The only reason it would be worth anything more later is because we have the ability as a town through a governmental process to clear all of that. So I don't find that problematic. I mean, it's just, they're kind of reading into this. I think they're thinking it's a freestanding property. They're going to get into what would amount to a hornet's nest.
Yeah. It would be nice to sort that, because to get that property, then we can start moving forward with a proper subdivision, everything, whatever we want to do with the property.
Remind people this isn't one property as it is.
Yeah.
And even the two parcels have sub lines in them, property lines.
And not to beat a dead horse, but I think the nature of these properties that are often owners unknown are cloudy, and there's a long history of these deeds being researched here on the Cape, and I don't know, it's not unusual that they're considered cloudy, and that's the whole process is to uncloud them.
I also I think I need to correct myself if I go back and watch the tape. I probably said the wrong solicitation. This was for a secondary appraisal. I don't know if I
Appraisal,
said surveyor.
Oh,
That's what it was.
appraisal,
So
oh.
it got
I
appraised
thought
at
a
170,
deed-
and everyone thought that was too high.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
So the directive that I had received as an outcome of the town meeting vote through the Board of Selectmen because of concerns by Finance Committee was to seek a secondary appraisal.
Right.
And that's where we're striking out. We're not getting responses for the appraisal. And one of the appraisers that I spoke to, again, because he's under contract for a different one, simply said that he doesn't know that his efforts would come to anything different than what we already have in an appraisal, and it's just not a property that's appealing to appraisers.
Not appealing to appraisers?
So can we go
Correct.
back to the Board of Selectmen and tell them that's what we came up with?
So that is the net effect of me
Yeah.
informing you folks that the next step would be for me to advise the board that the appraisal that we had that was done in October of 2021 for $170,000 may be the only appraisal that we have, and we need to make a decision to move forward on the eminent domain taking.
And it was still the right course of action, no matter how you slice it. If somebody gets a 1% fractional interest from a distant family member, and they go to land court, they're going to wind up with the property. And it'll bisect what we're trying to do here. And I have a feeling that that's exactly what the express purpose would be, to acquire the property so that they could wind up flipping it back to the town at a premium.
Yeah.
We should
But the town
continue
has to
doing
put
what we're doing.
aside the 170.
Yeah. So
Well,
I understand what we were trying to do. We were
yeah.
trying to lower the 170 to something more reasonable because it is bound by problems. But still, no money's changing hands. I hope everybody understands that. This only happens if somebody comes forward with a legitimate claim and they're willing to satisfy whatever arrearage in taxes.
And the reason why it's getting a high appraisal, that there's the possibility of the paper road. If that
Right.
does exist, then that's a viable piece of land. If it's landlocked, yeah, it's not worth 170, but it could be worth 170 at today's market if it's accessible through a paper road.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. So the point I was trying to make originally before I used one key word incorrectly, and that is an indictment of me, is to just inform everybody that, you know, there was a directive to try to get a secondary appraisal to see if the appraiser comes in the appraisal comes in lower. The answer right now in February, almost March of 2022 is the town's not getting any luck getting an additional appraiser to come out to do that appraisal. And so I will inform the Board of Selectmen, because my recommendation would be There was a good faith effort to get a secondary appraisal done. It hasn't come to fruition. To your points, Brendan, town meeting appropriated a dollar amount and has the money set aside for the town to put in escrow. So we have the votes and the authorization to move forward. The sticking point right now is whether there could be a secondary appraisal, and it's not looking like we can.
In worst case scenario, it costs the town 170.
That's my take on it.
And to be clear, since the town meeting can't instruct, but it can authorize, they authorize Board of Selectmen to do the eminent domain taking.
Correct.
So
Absolutely.
we're at that point,
Unanimously.
yeah.
So that will fall with you next step, you can report that?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
So that would be the update, well, the most immediate update, if I could, to the Pleasant Lake Avenue properties as it relates to that one. Again, we have the deed, you've heard the information on the appraisal on the other parcel. Was there any other discussion items that the trust wanted to talk about with regard to Pleasant Lake Avenue?
No, I think that's the first step.
Yeah,
Let's get there, and then we can talk about engineering services for that property.
yeah.
Can't figure out what you want to develop until you know
Or
what
an
you own.
RFP. Maybe we
Right.
do a detailed RFP or a subdivision or whatever we have to come up with.
And there could be several different approaches to, that's why I mentioned the property lines.
Yeah,
There
you
could be
gotta get
several
that
different approaches depending on where
That's
you
gonna be
are.
sorted out, yeah.
Larry, did you have any commentary on the Pleasant Lake Avenue properties, Marceline?
No, it's been a thrilling discussion. I understand it.
Once I figured out my words, words matter.
No, don't worry about it. I'd go with the 170 and not worry about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Judith?
And you may not have an answer for this. Do you have any idea of like the time that it would take to go through these next steps?
So I
Make
do,
the-
yeah.
The
And-
property whole,
And with regard to that eminent domain taking?
correct?
Yeah, so conversation with KP Law was, the next step would be the survey that I talked about. We, as Brendan mentioned, we are up against the constraints of the industry, but KP Law felt that it's something that if we were able to go out to procurement, and I can do that, I would think probably by the end of the month, if I update the board of selectmen and they're okay with the current appraisal, that we could have survey done within the next 3 to 5 months, and then have all the paperwork filed in the fall of
Okay,
2022.
thank you.
In one final add-on to all of this, it's one of the reasons we didn't expunge the lot lines. We didn't join anything. Right? I don't want to get geeky with everybody, but we are constrained. Some source of the money was the Community Preservation Act funds that came through the CPC. They have a hard restriction by state law, 60%, 80%. That's it. That's all they'll allow. Some portion of that property, it's going to be driven by what those lot lines look like. Some portion of it proportionately was bought with the cell tower money. That money is not constrained. It could get up to 100% of area median income. So we could come up with a real true mixed housing scenario, but we won't know that until we get the middle property, delineated and
Right, and that'd be great.
working, and then look at what we've got in terms of percentages. If it's 80-20, then what represents 20% of the land mass there?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Anything else on Pleasant Lake Avenue? Anybody from the audience? And Larry, you good?
I'm good.
Thank you.
You want a refill?
Second part of that gets to the Sisson Road, and again, trust members, with apologies to Larry, you have in front of you a 4-question narrative that I compiled from email correspondence with Katie Klein at KP Law, as well as the original deed that is referenced in one of her answers. So again, I think for the benefit of everyone watching, I'm going to go through the questions and answers. The first question that was directed by the board for me to council was, if the Board of Selectmen were to vote to convey the parcel at 265 Sisson Road, do the building and parking lot also, quote, automatically, end quote, convey with the parcel? Council's response was, the deed to the trust as currently written would convey the entire parcel and any improvements thereon, including the buildings and parking lots, to the trust. The conveyance would be subject to the terms of the lease with the theater. So I say that because if you look at the Article 61 of the 2019 town meeting vote, of which this was part, and you look at the original deed, which I've handed out to the board members, the original deed makes reference on the first page to any trees, buildings, or other structures on the land above described are included in this order of taking. And then the town meeting vote makes reference to the premises described in book 9970, page 13, and that's the deed that I just made reference. So there was question at the board selectman level of what was intended to be conveyed, and I think council has answered that, meaning it was intended to be everything, lock, stock, and barrel, my phrase, not council's phrase. Question number 2, if the building and lot are conveyed with the parcel, what effect does that have on the present lease? And the conveyance would not affect the terms of the lease, was the response. Can the board, I will put out there that this question had a parenthetical. The parenthetical was, is it advisable? I put that out there because it was not answered. So the question that council answered was, can the board convey the land but retain certain rights to the building and/or parking lot? And the response was, the Board of Selectmen could retain custody of a portion of the Sisson Road property. And then question number 4, can the Affordable Housing Trust assume the lease on behalf of the town? And as we've already heard, the response from council, the trust would assume the lease, i.e. become the landlord under the lease, if the entirety of the property were conveyed to the trust. And then she adds a narrative where these are her words, and I quote, I am thinking that it may not make sense for the trust to be a landlord in these circumstances. Ownership and management of a theater are not purposes for which an affordable housing trust is established. I assume the rent is intended to go to the town and not to the trust. It might be preferable for the town to retain custody of the theater, the word lot is in quotes, and to convey custody of the remainder of the property to the trust. If that is what the town intends, please advise, and I will deem to determine how to best to effectuate that objective. Selectman Howell.
Just as a thought, because it seems like we keep trying to find more and more impediments to doing something there. We kind of worked on this before the Marceline land became available. Not kind of, we did. With MHP, we met with them. We had several discussions with them. There was an understanding at the time that the theater would actually, in concert with us, support this project. At that point, that was based on the assumption they'd stay put. It really doesn't matter in a certain way that gets counted immediately as part of the inventory of what's being conveyed to us, because everything that we were doing, everything, was based on engineering to see what we could put there, and it was presumed to be 2 quads. Mm-hmm. The people who do new building like that typically don't do the retrofitting for an old structure anyway, so it's unlikely we'd get a developer who'd want to do something to rebuild a structurally really old building to create new units in that and do the 2 quads. And doing one wouldn't preclude doing the other down the road anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a leased property. That wouldn't be something we would transfer or sell. It'd be a leased property.
All I'm saying is I'd like to get some progress, and instead of getting stuck over arguing about what we do with the building can still be a thought to be held in the future, and that some thought could be given, okay, we're not going to renew the lease when it comes up, and then that would be a discrete development project that just happens to be on the same property.
Right.
But right now, we're already pretty far down the road in terms of, like, we were doing conceptualizations. We had talked about wants and wishes. As far as I recall, Laura Schufelt had gotten as far as engineering. And this is a different kind of engineering. I just want everybody to understand that, because the concern was that the sand integrity in that area was such that we needed to know that if we dropped some foundations in there, they weren't going to slide in Nantucket Sound. I hate to be, sarcastic about it, but that's really what this was all about. It was about the integrity of the foundations.
Yeah.
So that was a necessary first step. But from that point, they were mapping out, parking, septic, where the buildings could go. So it's kind of like, it was kind of caught in suspension between COVID and the Marsline project.
Yeah, Bowler already stepped in and did
Yeah.
a septic system design where it's two septic systems or it's shared. So that's already been done with 2 quads up to 16 bedrooms. So that's kind of, that's where.
If we had that understanding, that's what I'm trying to say, is we should go with what we've already done work on and try to get something built. Should the building still be tied up in a lease? It doesn't really matter to me. I'm not sure it matters to anybody here who holds the lease, although I would tend to agree with council. It's not our purpose to be a landlord for a theater. But if that lease somehow gets changed or abrogated and the town wants to look forward to having the trust do a project there, that you probably shouldn't hold out on the progress that we've already made for some bigger progress, because I think people would like to see us succeed on something.
Yeah, and we have a draft RFP for this already in motion.
Yeah.
So something we've been working on as well.
Larry, any comments before we go around the horn?
I think my only comment, it's nice of the of legal counsel for KP Law to tell us what they think we might or might not want to do. But in the grander scheme of things, the Housing Trust can do whatever the heck it wants to. If we want to be a landlord, we can. So I'd leave that open. And I really don't think the advice that she's giving us is all that good, because we have a wide range of things that we can do.
So not to be argumentative, but the advice from council was for the benefit of
Yeah.
the board and administration. The
Okay,
the audience was not the
that's-
trust. However,
Okay.
as you've heard me talk about other matters on this agenda, I'm leveraging this meeting with the trust before I give updates to the Board of Selectmen. And to me, the question does still remain, and does the trust have an opinion on who should be the preferred landlord to the tenant?
In the grander scheme of things, I have to agree with you. I think that's your opinion, that we shouldn't be in the landlord business.
Correct. Yeah.
Judith, all right, so that's.
I mean, it's great, we're gonna build
Yep.
something new, but 20 years from now, it's gonna need
Yeah.
major maintenance.
How
And we
long
don't
is
wanna
the
be
lease?
using funds for that.
I believe it is a 20-year lease. when I
Oh,
looked at
It's
it.
Yeah.
over 20, yeah, I think it was originally 25-ish, but I think it's still over 20 years plus.
The only thing I wanted to throw out was one of the conversations one of the last conversations we had about this property was to explore putting the septic system underneath the green park so that there would be more space on the land to build more units, possibly, if that was an engineering possibility.
Oh, crossing the street?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was just a,
I think the work we've done to date and the quads that are drawn and the septic systems and the RFP that we've already spent money on, I think maybe just move forward with that. And if there is an opportunity, maybe there's a developer that comes like, gee, I'll do it if there's 20 units.
yeah.
Maybe that would be the option then, I
Okay,
think. Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, and the other thing is the septic. If you're building it knowing what you're going to do on it, it could be built as a hardened septic. You could put a parking lot over it, but that's at an additional expense. But there's all kinds of opportunities for that. It doesn't preclude, you're not going to be restricted to the parking lot's here, the septic has to go somewhere else.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's not a bad idea, yeah. Something we can work on when the
Yeah.
time comes.
But no, we did there was a lot of work done, so we
Oh, yeah,
should
I'm looking at the plans
definitely-
right now, yeah.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying this was the furthest project we had along absent an action plan of any sort. And it seemed like this was the one that was going to be the most possible for success in the nearest term.
Yes,
You've seen this. You've seen this?
absolutely.
Not this, my recollection starts with being the assistant town administrator working with the engineer at the time on soils test or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Good memory.
Won't have us die hard. Any other discussion on that then? Because, like I said, it'd be an update to the Board of Selectmen regarding the tenancy situation. And again, I would have to work with counsel Katie Klein on her probably emphasizing something in the existing lease. I don't know, that's why she's counsel. But I've heard clearly from the trust that, and I would add my echo to that, that we do not, the trust does not want to be in the business of being landlords for theaters.
And we would urge them not to delay it over this particular thing, because we do have plans that are already in the works.
Yep,
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
all right.
And the theater company wrote a very nice letter of support.
Based on
They
them
did.
Based
being
on-
lessee.
Right, exactly, yep. All right, that works for me, unless there's any other comments on this from either trust members? Anybody in the audience?
I'm good.
All right. Item D, this is unfortunately a quick update insofar as the town solicited for an affordable housing trust action plan. You recall, we talked at our last meeting in January to get that done. And so again, when you're talking procurement-wise and you're talking something that's $50,000 or less, and we assume it to be that, it requires solicitation of 3 quotes that the town must send out. We only need to get 1 back. Quotes were sent to Community Development Partnership, J.M. Goldson, and Mass Housing Partnership. I would remind the trust that those were the same entities that were solicited when the trust first did this several years ago. And as of the close of the request for return, no one had responded. So my recommendation is that we resolicit the same group and expand on the group. And if it's the willingness of the trust, we can lengthen the response time. I don't think, request for quotes, in many cases, you can do 3 days' notice. So the town did 2 weeks' notice. The minimum for an RFP is 2 weeks. So we could extend this out for the month of March, but if we extend it out for the month of March, we're now effectively not talking about an action, we wouldn't talk about an action plan anyway because no one responded. So, Don, please rescue me.
Not sure about that part.
On your own powers.
Yeah, there you go. I think, first of all, we should delineate, because we got a larger audience, and people who are watching this who aren't affordable housing geeks. That the Affordable Housing Trust was obligated under law to create an action plan for priorities and what the town envisions it wants to see built or rehabbed, and how that all fits together and how we move forward. The action plan that Brendan was talking about earlier is per property and has to do with, okay, so when are we going to call in the surveyor? They're different things. This is the overview. We had gotten halfway through this with J.M. Goldson. We did, because an integral part of this was public engagement in workshops. It was right in the depths of COVID. We were doing Hollywood Squares meetings everywhere, and people were not engaged in anything. But they did do interviews with legacy affordable housing people in the town. I think there were 5 of them that they interviewed about what had happened in the town and how that went. And they did get as far as doing a couple of workshops. One was in this room. As a matter of fact, I think Art was here for the Housing Committee, where we talked about what it was that the town was visioning and how that integrated into overall housing. Everything collapsed thereafter. I mean, there just wasn't any prospect of getting any more public input inside of a room. So Goldson has a half a plan right now. If it's the will of everybody, I could check with Jen and just make sure she's still interested in submitting something, which I don't want to get any further than that because I don't want to get involved in the procurement process. But I think it may well be that she was just swamped. She had to let go of one staff member in the depths of COVID because there was a disruption. And as predictably, when COVID lightened, everybody wanted to start up at the exact same moment. So she may not have even seen this thing because she was so buried in work.
So before there's any outreach, then it's the sense of the trust that we would
Absolutely.
extend the request solicitation period,
Mhm.
and what's your preference?
Have
2
Dawn do
weeks,
it.
a month?
Can we have Dawn spearhead that?
Um,
Would
um,
would that be the thing to do?
No, procurements are in office.
I'm sorry, we've already been working with them, so we've already given them money, we have to go back and procure it again?
So
I want
the
to make sure she was aware that it was out.
contract expired with the town.
Yeah, okay, all right, understood.
I have a contact, that's all I was offering, is that.
Yeah. Well, I
Jen-
was offering you to
Jen,
do it, that's all.
yeah, I know. Did I say that was all I was offering?
Yeah.
What do you feel is an appropriate extension of
A
time?
month.
Yeah,
I'd go with 2 weeks.
Thanks, Larry.
So I heard 2 weeks, I heard 4 weeks,
3 weeks?
3 weeks.
I'm still at a month.
What is the preference of the trust?
I'd say a month. Everybody's backlogged.
that sounds
know.
fine.
So then
It'd be nice
what
to have it before the next meeting,
We've
but-
waited this long.
Yeah.
We need to get this going.
Yeah.
Now, to that point, we could re-release the solicitation today, and we could have the deadline be a month from today, which is our next meeting,
Mhm.
or we could do it for the official end of the month, which is March 31st.
How about do it for 3 weeks? Can you do it for
Yeah, let's do
3
it for our next meeting.
weeks? Yeah, before the next meeting?
But maybe we have a phone call in between, rather than you're just gonna send an email out, maybe just follow up with a phone call as well. So email, phone call, and see.
So anybody outside of procurement can certainly do whatever they like,
Yeah, yeah,
both the chief procurement officer and the administrator.
that's why you're here, yeah.
Exactly.
That's what I meant
That
by-
was the hint that I
Yeah.
was not going to do that.
Yep.
Yeah,
Anyway,
anyway,
Jamie, does it pick up my blushing on the camera? So what we'll do is we'll have responses come back in time so that the trust can be made aware at our meeting on the 28th.
And does that go into the general comms, or does that, like, particular companies, it gets sent
Combids.
to?
She's asking combids, does it go into the,
So, no, something, request for, or solicitation for quotes is simply email or letter. It doesn't go into the combis. We haven't gone that route because it actually complicates matters. What we can do is try to find more firms that we're aware that do this, so we can reach out to other towns and ask beyond the 3 that we have, are there any others that they're aware of?
Okay, because there must be 20 or 30, I would assume.
Well,
I had heard 2.
Yeah, what I've heard is, quote, only a handful, so if we found 5, I think we'd be doing well.
Okay, thanks.
So that works for me. Was there anything else under item C?
I could also contact Laura Schufelter, who is, I didn't think MHP was going to be involved, but they may know of other people who would be. They typically wouldn't have contracted to subcontract something this small.
Thank you. Anything else under item D? Larry, you all set?
I'm good.
Trust
I'm good.
members? Anybody in the public? All right. Item C was the solicitation for professional survey services for 0 Oak Street, map 61, parcels B1A and B1B. And as I mentioned before, there is a typo in your memo in the packet. The response deadline for these quotes is close of business Friday, March 11th. It was not Friday, February 11th.
That's E, you mean?
And again, the firms that we reached out to were Coastal Engineering, Ryder and Wilcox, and Bowler Engineering. And as Brendan has indicated, we heard from Bowler Engineering. I will tell you that in the short term, what we heard from Bowler was, please redirect it to so-and-so. So I took that as a positive sign that there may be interest in that. So again, that close of business Friday, March 11th. So still hopeful. Go ahead,
Mr.
Larry.
Chairman, one quick question.
Yep.
Is this professional survey services for engineering or surveying?
This is surveying.
Oh, did we want Tom Stello involved?
If Tom wants to respond to this solicitation, that'd be wonderful.
Oh, good, okay.
Brendan, were you the contact, or was Larry the contact for Tom?
Larry was.
You want to give Larry a homework assignment?
There we go.
I'm well done, I just asked a question. Joe answered it.
All right. Again, submissions, Larry and anyone else that's interested is close of business Friday, March 11th.
Good.
Next item,
That's what they need to
Sorry.
know.
say again.
Just to repeat, that's, March 11th is the date that actually will affect what you folks want to do, because then we'll know better about whether we can find a surveyor for that, like, as soon as possible.
Thank you. Anything else on item E? All right, so item F, Selectman Howell, I know this was a topic that you wanted to put on, and I know Brendan, you wanted to speak to as well, so we'll open up discussion on future relations with the Community Preservation Committee.
I'm only going to say something brief and then have Brendan
Sure, go
do
ahead.
the whole thing. It was on there to basically to call a truce in general, to ratchet things down. I have no doubt that we couldn't have bought the Marsline property without them. They have been operating really in concert with our goals through the years. So if we have had a couple of spats recently, that's fine, but I'm sure Brendan had some observations that are more specific. All my interest in was like saying, okay, let's take a deep breath. Let's back up. I know you folks are interested in affordable housing, and you know that we're committed to building it. So we need the money. I don't want to get into an argument that actually holds hostage people who need to move into housing. So with that, I've got a lot of friends on CPC. I think that they do fine work, and they had some legitimate concerns that I know we can address. And Brendan, I'll yield to you.
Yeah, so the meeting that CPC had on the 17th was really talking just exclusively about the Affordable Housing Trust. And the topics were our application for funding, comments that were made in our meeting from January 31st, and just an overall lack of communication from us. So, the comments and acknowledgements from CPC during that meeting was they agreed that the Affordable Housing Trust has to be flexible. They saw a really big importance of the action plan. And they also, a lot of the members were talking about the mutual acknowledgement of what both the boards do. They don't know what we do and vice versa. So, they took the time to watch a couple of our meetings, and I did that as well, just to get a better feel of what they might be looking for. A housing coordinator, I think that's a great idea. And the other big topic was the application. It did not meet their expectations. There was items on there that they felt just should have been, filled in. It was not, and they want to make sure all the applications through all of their applicants are the same. They're not trying to treat us separately. They just want to make sure that we're meeting all the requirements. So for them, it was application, application, application. That was a running theme. And for us to also understand that the application is a competitive process, so we probably should take it as a priority to make sure that we're meeting the requirements as far as meeting with them, twice a year, giving them a report, which is, I think, deemed by the bylaw, I believe. So a full update to the CPC is probably the best thing they do. They have a meeting coming up that they want all their applicants. I think they do it every 6 months. I think one of us should be at that meeting and give just a quick breakdown on our action plan as we get it together, and the action plan maybe per property, and some that they've been involved with, we help with those purchases. And then also recommendations, that I see that we can do is, focus on the action plan. Definitely make sure we meet with CPC twice a year. And the information they need, make sure we provide it to them, and produce a solid application next time. I think they were very impressed with our 2018 application. 2019, we didn't do anything. 2020, we did. I think I got the years correct.
Yeah.
But either way, whatever we could do to, make them happy. And there were some members that were really upset, and I don't want anything that we're doing to make anyone that upset. If you were to watch that meeting, you might get the gist that I got. So whether a need for an apology, or maybe we'll just continue to do a better job in what we do to get them the information they need so everyone's happy. But like I said, I don't want to see anyone that unhappy with what we're doing. We're all volunteers. We all live in the same town, and I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page with that. So, but that was really it. And it's just to wrap it up, the mutual acknowledgement of what both boards do is important. And then working closer with our housing committee. So the housing committee is now up and running, so we're going to get some more information from them and more help as well. So I think we're on our way. We have everything in motion to make this work, and we definitely need the CPC to help us along the way, so.
Thank you, Brendan. John, it was your topic?
Yeah, just one addendum to that, Mr. Chair. This was a perfect storm thing. It wasn't like, if they're inferring arrogance on our part, I'm sorry that it just wasn't the case. But it's time for paid political advertisement. That's why we have a housing advocate on, because I had to do the last application that we asked for real money because it wasn't working, but we still had a housing coordinator. And at least I had something to work off of. I was not in a position to do that this time, and certainly Joe wasn't. He had just gotten into this whole process, and we had a deadline that was coming up, so we submitted something, and it probably wasn't as good, the work that we wanted to, but the whole point is Joe has gotten the staff now to actually get involved. Megan, as you saw on this agenda, has had her hands in two different things. And I don't anticipate that it can be staff-driven unless we can enhance the staff to have some point person that's truly responsible for all of the balls that are in the air. Like, what's the engineer doing on a day-to-day basis? And I'm pretty sure we can resolve it. My interest in putting this on the agenda was to say, I get what you're saying. It's not personal. We definitely want to work with you, and we're grateful for what you've done in the past for us. We couldn't have done what we were doing without that help. But the money, they had objected for a number of years to a contract that had a housing coordinator, and I totally agree with them. That we weren't getting out of it what we wanted out of it. And so coming up, we've got a request at town meeting. How many days is that again?
63.
I thought you'd know. We got a request in for town meeting for this. It's a crucial thing for the future of the town because it's one person who's a point person for everything. And I can assure them they're not going to get anything that's half-baked or not completed. And it certainly wasn't meant as a diss onto them because none of us here feel that way.
Right, exactly.
So normally I do a round robin. I'd like to take chairman's privilege and be the next to speak on this one. First of all, Brendan, thank you for reporting out, and thank you for, I was going to say a participant, but I think you were an onlooker at their meeting. But because what I want to convey for the record and to put out there is Chairman Dave Nixon and I met several weeks prior to that. We had a very, well, if I can say it this way, Dave and I have always had very strong and
Full and frank?
exactly full, frank, and exceptional discussions. And I put out there because I served under Dave when I was on Community Preservation Committee 3 years ago. Come March, I think, is my last meeting. Meaning Dave and I think, have a ton of mutual respect for each other, and I certainly have tremendous respect for Community Preservation Committee. I chuckled because you said we're all volunteers.
Well, I know you're not.
I'm the
yes.
one guy that can't claim that.
We have volunteered you for a bunch of
Otherwise,
things.
that'd be a great right tax write-off. But no, it's not lost on me that I'm not the volunteer and I'm the conduit between those. So I offered to the chairman to be present at their meeting on the 17th, and he respectfully declined. I offered to have either myself or the vice chair if there was a preference, and the response was that he felt that this was a necessary conversation for the CPC to have amongst themselves. So I want to make sure that people understand that the offer was made, it was extended, and it was politely declined. And I emphasize the word politely. Your report, Brendan, today is helpful for me because I was not aware of the twice yearly meeting. So that's something I want to make sure that Chairman Nixon and I connect on generally. The other thing I want to put out there, though, is I had, and I think the trust remembers, that I had presented to CPC in, I believe it was October of '21, for almost 3 hours. I enjoyed that because that's just a regular conversation for me to talk for 3 hours. But I got a sense that it was helpful for the Community Preservation Committee members at the time. I bring that out there because I emphasized one point, and we've heard the reference already. This body has had a vendor provide coordination services. So I'm parsing words, I'm getting the words right, unlike earlier in the agenda, but I'm parsing them purposely, meaning there was the role of housing coordinator that was funded up to $50,000 from a grant through CPC, and it was for the purposes of aiding the Affordable Housing Trust. Now, my predecessor, and then I, as the acting, continued the practice of having that be a vendor, provide the housing coordinator services, even though in my belief, which is why I've taken actions that the board's already aware of, a housing coordinator is not a consultant, it's not a vendor, but that's how we use the relationship for years. So recognizing that the town of Harwich is very much engaged and very proactive, or really gaining traction to be proactive on trying to do as much as we can to impact upon affordable housing. When I presented my budget message to the Board of Selectmen back in early February, I emphasized that I would be developing a role known as a housing advocate, and that was meant to get rid of the role of a housing coordinator vendor. The problem with that is a role that has to roll through the Board of Selectmen as the employer of the town, administration, and me as administrator as the chief personnel administrator. And so that position, if it's funded by appropriation in the general operating budget, would be advertised and would be hired by me. Now, the purpose for that person then is to immediately be, just as the title suggests, an advocate for all matters housing. And he or she is intended to be the primary point of contact, first for the Housing Trust, on a regular basis and a staff resource, in addition to me as administrator and any other resources that I can bring to bear. But also a liaison to the Housing Committee, the Housing Authority, Real Estate and Open Space, really being that day-to-day person who starts to elevate the conversation on housing. I say all of that at the Affordable Housing Trust meeting because my recommendation has been to Community Preservation that the focus go towards the housing advocate position and not towards the housing coordinator stipend role. And so to that, my preference would be that the application be withdrawn. And I do that in the sense of the Vikings, as I understand, that when they reached shore, set a torch to their vessels, so they had no way of return. And so if we do not fund housing coordinator, $50,000 through CPC, then we as a town have to commit to this full-time, permanent, benefited position of housing advocate, whose salary is already put into the budget that I presented, and it's my understanding that the budget that the Board of Selectmen passed forward to the Finance Committee. And so I say all of that because when I go before CPC, that would still be my mindset. Because I believe it's accurate to say that was not the intent 4 years ago, I think, or coming up on 4 years, when my predecessor sought funding for a housing coordinator. I've always understood it to be, it needs to be a living, breathing person who's an employee, who's reportable, and a reporting structure, and then works across all channels to support housing and not a vendor. Not that there's anything wrong with vendors, and I think the vendor that we had did sufficient work as we asked them to do. They met everything we needed them to do under the previous contract. So, to wrap it all up, Dave and I still talk. We're still on very friendly terms. We have still a very healthy mutual respect for each other, for our roles, and for what we bring to the town. And I agree with comments that were already made, that we use this as a point forward to say, listen, masks are gone. Remote meetings could be the way of the dodo, so let's all look towards a brighter future, and we can all get this done. However, I wanted to use this occasion to just inform the trust of my mindset with regard to that critical role of housing advocate. So with that, Larry, did you have any comments on CPC or anything I just said?
Oh, it'll take a little while before I jump in to answer that one. Having said that, first of all, I agree with you 100%. I think we should have a housing advocate, and he or she should be on board as quickly as possible. And secondly, if I can help with the Community Preservation Committee, I would suggest that if you'd like, I would do a summation of at least the Marceline properties, and I'll ship that back to Mr. Howell, who'll look it over to make sure I didn't trip on my fingers, and see if that will give you a good start to bring the Community Preservation Committee up to date on what we have done there. We haven't been all that lazy.
You mean to edit it down to a page or so?
Larry?
Yeah.
Larry, I want to build on one thing you said, though, because I thought you might have been going in one direction, you went in a different direction, but I'm fine with the direction you went in. But I do want to emphasize that there was nothing that would prevent any of the members of the trust reaching out to any members of CPC. And to me, that's probably the best way to get us back on track, is for all of us to reach out to our friends, our neighbors, and our colleagues, because we're all united by the town of Harwich. And so I would certainly just put that out there for the trust. I would have no issue as presiding officer, so to speak, of this trust. If members did that, I think that's going to be nothing but helpful.
I'll talk to the liaison.
Very good.
Okay.
I got that reference. Larry, anything else?
No, I'm fine.
All right,
Fine.
thank you. Judith?
No, and if they don't want to fund this position,
I think he just wants to withdraw it.
Say again?
If-
I couldn't hear the comment.
We need to put that on the agenda because then we can vote about whether we do want to keep it or we want to.
yeah. My question was, what happens if they won't fund, if they won't support the position?
So for me, I've already built the program where the appropriation has nothing to do with CPC. So
Okay.
the position of housing advocate is in the general operating budget.
Okay.
It's under administration to start, and it's already accounted for in the budget. So
Separate
to
from
me, the CPC
Beautiful.
grant of $50,000 is superfluous.
Perfect.
Just to add to this, because a lot of these things are like one-time impediments that it just piled up at one point. We also have approved, in addition to the rooms tax, and part of that is directed towards affordable housing. We have properties that we could flip. There's other mechanisms that we can raise money, but in my mind, no matter what we have to do, even if it comes out of our pocket because we have to generate some income, we need to have this position, and it really shouldn't be a contract position.
Thank you. And your
Yeah.
reference also is to the January 1st, 2023 rooms,
Right.
hotel,
We
motel.
we will shortly have an adjunct cash flow, thanks to the Board of Selectmen. And we'll be in a position with funds coming from different directions to the cell tower, the rooms tax, the possibility of flipping a property to generate revenue. We should be in a position to do this, but the town has to really stand up and stand for this. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about, yeah, we want affordable housing, but from the inside, and I think everybody sitting here, even you, Joe, you were only just getting started in this. This was daunting. It was a horrible year. We had absolutely no staff support from the contractor during most of it, and we're not set up to do that kind of stuff. I know my dining room table is still taking a hit from all kinds of things that were backed up. Your office has a file that's about this thick.
That fell apart on the floor.
Yeah, that did fall apart on your floor. But there's no one person who's responsible for this. When you go to the planning board, the planner sits there and has mapped out things about what your options under law are. When you go to the ZBA, likewise the planner. There's a conservation agent that does the same. There isn't that same kind of urgency right now on housing. And I think what Joe said is absolutely correct path to go is It's not on the agenda, but we really need to discuss putting all our eggs in the town meeting basket and say, we need to do this professionally. We're not going to just do it part-time.
And you asked about CPC if they supported it, but they already did vote on it on February 3rd, the $50,000 for the coordinator, so.
Do you know the date of that meeting?
That's February 3rd?
No, I'm sorry,
Oh.
you said they're gonna be reaching out to applicants?
That's coming up
That's, yeah,
March meeting, I think, I want to say.
I don't have that agenda on me. Yeah, I can get to it.
So,
And
I'll talk to Dave.
Judith?
so if they voted, okay, so again, it's just,
We can't do anything now anyway. It's not
Yeah,
on the agenda,
all right.
so don't worry about it this second.
On the CPC topic, anyone from the general public? Yep. Selectman Anderson, please.
I would just like to thank you. You know, my whole gig has been housing. So I come to all of these meetings and I'm involved with the housing committee. And I got a couple of phone calls. You better watch the CPC meeting. You know, it's on YouTube. I never knew how to do that before, but I learned how to do it. And you ought to watch the Affordable Housing Trust meeting. So I thought, gee, I must have missed one. So I watched the two meetings and saw impending doom. And I am just so impressed with the way the five of you have worked to resolve that. So kudos to the group.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else on general public for that topic? All right, next item we have, Judith, I think this was yours. This is discussion and possible vote to hold meetings twice a month.
I put that out there because my hope was that things would move faster. I don't know, but it's probably, maybe it's too early to do twice a month until we get all the engineering things, until we have more material to make decisions on and move things forward.
If I could start, then I'll say, first of all, thank you for that last comment you made, only because I know what my dance card is for the next 63 days. There's a reason why I track that. But I'm not averse to more meetings. All I would ask is, given how my schedule's already built, Mondays work best. So I could insert another Monday afternoon if that's the way that the trust wanted to go. But if there's a willingness to hold off until we get some of these things underway, I know that post-town meeting, I have far greater flexibility to rework something twice a month into my schedule. Sure, Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I love you guys, but I am really not into going to meetings just to be with you guys. And having said that, there's a couple of things that are baked in the cake that we've already done now that aren't going to be ready in 2 weeks. So for the time being, this will happen to coincide with Joe's objective, is there's no real point in meeting except to discuss, well, how's that bid package that you put out last week going?
Yeah.
So in that vein, it's not a lack of urgency on our part. We certainly, there are times where we're probably going to need to.
We might have to have an extra meeting in
Yeah.
1 month, but yeah, we could definitely keep that as an option.
I think it's a
Sure.
great idea. It's just a little premature right now.
Yeah, yep.
Larry, any comments on that topic?
I'm fine.
All right, thank you. So before I open that up to public, I would say,
Boom.
we knew you were fine because you're in Florida. But Judith, I, for one, I appreciate, I think, where you're coming from on the request, meaning there's a lot to get done, especially where we've talked about how important affordable housing is. So
Yeah.
I think as we get into the process, I think it makes sense to expand our schedule. So I appreciate where that's coming from. Anyone from the general public on that topic? So then, before we get a motion, I apologize. Member updates is next on the agenda. And then we'll talk about the next meeting. Any member updates? Larry, I'll start with you. Do you have any updates?
No, I've listened. I'm fine.
Thank you. Brendan?
None.
Don?
Yes, before they go. When you have people captive and there's a camera on you, then you need to take advantage of that. I know you said you're doing the golf thing. I want to repeat that The Adult Shared Living of Harwich Incorporated is doing a golf tournament at Captain's Course on May 16th. And how would they get a hold of tickets for that? Who would they call? Okay, is Jeff's number on
Yeah,
any
so
of the
Jeff's
packet?
Jeff's phone number is 508-237-7170.
And there come all the spam calls.
I'm sorry, was it okay to do?
It's a little late now.
Well, it's on the flyer.
That's right.
So,
And thank you, Don, for that. Judith, anything?
No, all set,
All
thanks.
right. All right, thank you, folks. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, March 28th, 1 o'clock here in Griffin Room. Is there a motion
Motion
to
to adjourn.
adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
It's been moved by
Second.
Howell, seconded by Lowney, so roll call. Larry, motion to adjourn.
Approved.
Thank you. Brendan?
aye.
Don?
Yeah, aye.
Judith?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.